Hello, and welcome to the wild and wondrous yet horrifying world of Twin Peaks. You're probably wondering why this individual is partially see-through, especially his crazy, weird tinfoil hat. Well, the truth is, this poor, sad individual is stuck between our world and another dimension. So please, just roll with it. Well, at least my interpretation of Twin Peaks. I binged the most recent episodes, the new 5 in season 3, 25 years after the original first 2 seasons ended. I binged them last night, and I took a bunch of notes. I was getting really into it, and I'm basically just gonna read through these notes. You can't see. There it is. Read through these notes and episode by episode, and maybe figure out some theories and see where things go. So please join along with me on this journey. So a quick disclaimer. Now, I wrote down these notes as I was going through each episode, and you're gonna go on this journey of discovery with me. So the theories I espouse in like episode 1, it's going to change by the time we get to episode 5. So keep that in mind as we're going through this five episode arc. Episode 1. So right off the bat, we got numbers. Anyone who knows Lost, which was heavily inspired by Twin Peaks, knows numbers are important, even when we don't have any idea what they mean, honestly. So 430 is the first number that we see. What does it mean? The scene with the cube, oh my gosh, that was insanity. So what does it all mean? Well, I think the creature we see in the cube is an owl's true form. Now, we've been told that owls are not what they appear to be before. I believe that owls are extra-dimensional beings, and I think that the cube shifts the entire space inside it to the extra-dimensional being's own reality so that we can see their true form. And I think that perhaps the box even acts as a lure or a black hole that pulls in extra-dimensional beings for observation. And speaking of owls, the deaths of those 2 kids seemed very bird of prey inspired, if you will. Lots like a flapping wings type frenzy and gashes like talons. It seemed very much inspired by an attack from a bird of prey. And so I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that is heavily implying that the extra-dimensional creature we saw in this murder scene was an owl's true form. The flickering flashlight during the car scene, I think that's going to prove to be incredibly important. My own theory is that maybe electronics malfunction when otherworldly beings are present, and this could be an interesting homage to Silent Hill and Stranger Things, which have also done similar things like flickering lights in those shows usually mean there's something otherworldly going on. And those shows were also both heavily inspired by Twin Peaks, so it would be another instance of kind of full circle inspiration, if you will. Shaggy, which is what I'm going to call him, Matthew Lilliard's character, I don't know his name. I know he's a principal, but he'll always be like Shaggy or SLC Punk to me, so that's what I'm going to call him, is Shaggy. Shaggy has a total Leland moment. He knows he did something wrong, but he's not sure what or why or how he did it. And it looks like he's going to go crazy trying to deal with that sudden burden of emotion. I don't know if it's necessarily guilt. I think that it was, but definitely there is some really bad emotions he's dealing with at that time. And I think that, honestly, Matthew Lillard is nailing it in that role. Like, the entire cast is great, but I really am enjoying his character. although I could be biased because I happen to be a fan of Matthew Lillard. Episode 2. So, new number, 257. What does it mean? We don't really have any context still to what these numbers mean. The black guy in the gel who just up and vanishes and his head kind of just floats off. What is all that about? Is he the spirit that possessed Shaggy perhaps and made him kill that librarian? That's my leading theory right now. So what was that red poof when Mrs. Shaggy got shot by Evil Cooper? The entity that killed her, by the way, seems to have the same modus operandi, MO, as the entity that killed the librarian. They both had their eye shot out, and the resulting area is kind of scarred around. And it looks very similar to how we found the decapitated librarian's head. Oh, wow. So Laura Palmer, or rather fake Laura Palmer, she says sometimes her arms bend back. Like, she feels like Laura, but sometimes her arms bend back. Is that her way of saying, like, she's kind of an opposite of Laura Palmer? What does this person whisper to Cooper, by the way? And what was happening right before she disappeared? It looks almost like she got cast out of the Black Lodge. And my question would be, why? So, speaking of arms bending back, it's not too far after this that we see the tree with a heart for a head that calls itself the arm. So I'm wondering if that has some connection to what Laura Palmer, fake Laura, was saying earlier. Important to note, the computer that Evil Cooper used was malfunctioning and flickering. So this seems to bolster my argument that electronics misbehave in the presence of otherworldly beings. I think we can even go so far as to say that the person holding or using the malfunctioning electronics is probably an otherworldly being themselves. So I think we should pay a lot of attention to that. If you see something malfunctioning that somebody is using, that person is not who they appear to be. So, what is going on in the Black Lodge? Chaos erupts, and the floors open up, and the tree sways and casts Palpatine lightning bolts. What is the reason for all of this? Then Cooper takes like an astral ride through the cosmos, and while he's doing that, he falls into the cube. And it seems like he is not consciously led there. It wasn't a conscious choice, so he was like pulled in like a black hole. It's important to note, by the way, that his cube scene takes place before the murders happen. The murders take place after he has already vacated, so he is not the murderer. But that doesn't mean that someone who was trailing him isn't the murderer themselves. So episode 3, woo! We're over halfway there now. 2 new numbers that make one number, 315 and 315. I'm beginning to think that the lodges are like the ring of trees in The Nightmare Before Christmas. They're branching points to new dimensions. The 15 on the device changed to a 3 after pulling that lever. And I think that was an indication that the room shifted from one dimension to another. And I think that the 15th dimension is the Black Lodge, and the 3rd dimension is our own world. The lever was a dimensional shifter, which is why it gave off so much energy when it was pulled, and why things seem slightly different once Cooper is back inside the hatch. Speaking of Cooper, I think he was supposed to get his body back during this scene after he switches to the lower dimension, but it seems like something goes wrong. So he was supposed to basically switch places with Evil Cooper and Bob and get his own body back. But instead he takes over the body of another doppelganger of his, a guy named Dougie Jones. The question is whether this Dougie Jones exists in our world or in a different dimension. I am currently subscribing to the theory that this is not our dimension that Dougie Jones' universe is in. It's a different world. It's a different dimension. The first numbers we see in this new location are 315, which I think indicates that it is a in-between world. It's in between our world and the Black Lodge. It is not our world. Perhaps this is a place that Cooper needs to go to in order to get rehabilitated or properly transition to our world. 4. Woman at the casino. She says, "Do you want to go home, Dougie? Where's your home?" I think this lends credence to the idea that this is not Cooper's world, and he's kind of transitioning to get to his own world. And I'm going to officially dub this dimension, by the way. Dougie Jones' world is dimension 315. Our dimension is dimension 3. Black Lodge is dimension 15. So the casino manager, when he gives Cooper his winnings, he says, "Promise you'll come back and try your luck with us again. We're watching you." And I feel like that's kind of the Black Lodge saying goodbye to Cooper. So I feel like this is another kind of closure point, if you will, in the transition from the Black Lodge to our world. So when Cooper gets out of the limo and is standing in front of Dougie Jones' house, an owl hoots overhead and flies by. And I am subscribing to the idea that this owl is the murderer and creature we see in the cube later, or technically later on, but really back in episode 1. So the timeline-wise, this scene happens after Cooper had his own cube experience. And we know Cooper had his cube experience before the murders. So the timing at least fits for this owl to represent the murderer that ultimately kills those 2 people in episode 1. And as we get along in this episode, it becomes clear that I need to revise my earlier theory. 315 is not a place of rehabilitation or transition for Cooper. It looks like Cooper was tricked into taking over the body of Dougie Jones. And from the looks of it, Dougie Jones suffered mightily for it, turning into a gold ball bearing in the Black Lodge. So it looks like originally Cooper was supposed to retake his own body and essentially switch places with evil Cooper and Bob. But somehow he switched places with Dougie Jones instead. And, poor Dougie. But this might explain why Cooper is so out of whack in 315. And it's because he's in the wrong body. And it's because he's in the wrong universe, if we're going with what I believe. So finally, episode 5. So way back in episode 1, the dead librarian's decapitated head, we should note, was found with a John Doe's body. And it looks like that John Doe's body belongs to Dougie Jones. So I'm not sure how this is possible. But it's like all the evidence is there. The dead body is bigger, like Dougie Jones was. The show made several nods to the fact that Dougie Jones was a bigger guy than Cooper was. And of course there's the ring, which is pretty much irrefutable proof that this is Dougie Jones' body. So I'm thinking that maybe the switching thing had something to do, like when Cooper was trying to switch back into his own body, he got rerouted to Dougie Jones' body, and somehow Dougie Jones' body got rerouted to our dimension. And so that's how I'm consolidating the idea that Dougie Jones' universe is different from ours, but somehow his body can still end up in our universe. So I think something happened when all the souls and bodies were being rerouted during that dimension shifter scene. So what's with the green flash on that guy's face during the boardroom meeting? And how does Cooper know it means he's lying? Further on in the episode, during during Evil Cooper's phone call, which was freaking insane, by the way. It seems like he knows a secret of the Wardens. And the Wardens, Mr. Strawberry, that's the secret. The Warden kind of does this, like he's trying to wipe lipstick off his face. So the question is Mr. Strawberry a secret lover? Or is it the Warden's own drag queen alter ego? Perhaps the Warden is a cross-dresser and has kind of kept that a secret. The military seems to have some knowledge about what's going on in all of this. Are they aware of extra-dimensional activity? I'm leaning towards the idea that they built the cube. And I think that we'll see that they know more about everything going on than we realize. Gordon Cole already has the Blue Rose files, which are basically our version of the X-Files, Twin Peaks version of the X-Files, which, by the way, was also inspired by Twin Peaks. So, a lot of full circle type things, adding it all up. So, first, I think the owls are extra-dimensional beings, or signs at least where extra-dimensional activity is happening. I think the cube was built by the military for the purpose of capturing and monitoring extra-dimensional beings. I think there are at least 3 dimensions that we're dealing with. The 3rd dimension, the 15th dimension, and the 315 dimension. But also, so these are all very numbers focused. And as we remember earlier, there was like 257 and 430. Now 430 is a double of 315. So perhaps there's at least 6 dimensions that we're dealing with here. If the 4, the 30, and the 430 also prove to be dimensions. And perhaps these are all dimensions. So 257, a 2, a 57, and a 257. It's getting quite mind-blowing, to say the least. So I think just recapping here, I think we need to continue to pay a lot of attention to malfunctioning electronics and who is using them. I do think that it means that whoever uses an electronic when it malfunctions should be looked at very closely. I don't think they're who they say they are. Like Detective Dave. And okay. Whew. Oh, man. So, that's all I have for now. My brain has thoroughly bled out my ears. My voice, you might notice, is becoming a little hoarse. Is that a horse? Anyway, so let me know what you think I got right and what you think I got, oh my gosh, you are so stupid, dude, wrong. Sound off in the comments. And be sure to subscribe and share this as well if you like it. I love hearing from you and I love interacting, and the more the merrier. So please tell all your friends. Have a great night.